You know more about diversity than you think you do. Oh, hang on a sec. Okay, that's better. So by the time I stop talking, it's my hope that you will uncover the hidden treasures inside you. It's what you already know that you don't know you already know about diversity that's holding us all back from true diversity. Okay, so that's enough about you. Let's talk about me. So I've become a go-to person for this topic of diversity. I'm an actor, filmmaker, teacher, and advocate. And we've been fighting for more diversity on our screens and stages in Australia. But I have something to admit. I'm a fraud. I don't really know what I'm doing. I've kind of figured it out as I've gone along, and we'll just see how we go with that. Also, to be a diversity spokesperson is not really something that's possible because diversity by nature of the word is lots of people and lots of different things. So there is no such thing as a diversity spokesperson who can encompass it all. So, let's draw a line down the middle of the stage. And let's say, on this side, I'm the expert. So, as the expert, I'm smooth, measured, I have statistics up my sleeve, I can argue the business case, and I'm positive, but I will call out inequity when I see it. As the expert, I can also let you know that my version of diversity is not just gender and race. It's gender, race, sexuality, disability, cultural and linguistic background, religion, socioeconomic background, and more. Okay, so on this side, we have the fraud. And I think diversity sucks because it's tokenistic and stereotypical, and I want to be measured as an individual based on my merits. And maybe if I bang on about diversity enough, someone will give me a decent acting role. Okay, so that's how this works. So, what's your name? Sarah. Sarah, ask me this question here.
Where are you from?
Okay, expert. I was born and bred in Perth in Western Australia, and I've lived in Sydney for the last 15 years. My parents are Chinese from Malaysia, and so they're not Malay, they're Chinese from Malaysia, just like I'm Chinese Australian. Okay, so where am I from? Yes, I was born in Perth in Western Australia. I am Chinese, but I'm not from China. I've never been to China, I can't speak any form of Chinese, and I'm not even very good at using chopsticks. Okay, that was an easy one. Let's play with this. Intersectionality. Who has heard of this term? A show of hands. Okay, not many. Great. Well, the expert's here. So as the expert, I can let you know that intersectionality is the overlapping and intersecting of different social identities and the related systems of oppression, domination, and discrimination. It was founded by Kimberly, I've forgotten her name, but she has a TED Talk and you can look it up. Google it. Good segue to the fraud. Okay, so I didn't really know what intersectionality was until very recently. It was 2 years ago when Patricia Arquette won the Oscar for Boyhood. And she called for equal rights and wage equality for women. And Meryl Streep and J.Lo were going, yes, yes. Did anyone see that video? Yes, yes. And I was like, this is cool. All right, I'm going to look it up. So jumped off Facebook, jumped onto Twitter. What are people saying about this? And there were a whole pile of irate women saying, Patricia Arquette, doesn't she know about intersectionality? And I was like, oh, I want to be an expert. I don't know what intersectionality is. Quick Google. So what happened was Patricia Arquette went backstage and she called for gay people and people of colour to now fight for women. And I thought, well, that's weird because the way I take that, it's as though a woman can't be a gay person or a woman can't be a different colour than white, I presume. So that made me realise, holy crap, I am intersectionality. So this is my intersectionality Venn diagram. When I was 17, I realised I was gay, and it's been a slow and steady coming out process ever since. And people think, well, this is a really big deal, this must be a really big thing. But for me, it was a long time ago, and it doesn't really affect my day-to-day comings and goings. And since then, I've realised, oh crap, I'm Asian. And even more recently, I've realised, oh crap, I'm a woman. And so the expert in me says, well, I can be an expert on diversity then, because I have all these things inside me, so I can be an authority. But the fraud in me says, I can't really talk about any of these things, because if I talk about one, I don't really know which part. No one part can encapsulate all of who I am. And this brings me to the first thing you already know. There is diversity within diversity. An example, when you're straight, you have a plethora of places you can go to that have different vibes and different styles, and you can choose. I grew up in Perth in Western Australia where there's one gay pub and one gay bar. Doesn't mean you'll like the people, doesn't mean you'll like the music. Okay, so that's the gay part done. Let's have a look at the Asian part. When I was in second year of drama school, my voice teacher, Betty Williams, amazing teacher who has since passed away, rest her soul, she taught us how to neutralise our accent. So my accent was too ochre, and she wanted it to be more well-rounded so that I could take on different types of accents, neutralising the accent. And one day she said to me, because I was struggling with it and everyone else seemed to be getting it, she said, do you know why you can't neutralise your accent? I was like, why, Betty? Why? Tell me why. She said, it's because you don't look Australian, so you have to sound Australian. And that was my knee-jerk reaction too. A bit of laughter, a bit of a bit of like, what? But I went home and I thought about it and I went, you know what, she's right. And I thought back to when I was a kid, and this is a story that not many Australians know about. But in Perth in the 1980s, I was about 7 or 8 years old, there was a guy named Jack Van Tongeren who took over the Australian nationalist movement. And they plastered Perth with racist posters. It was on the back of street signs, on public walls, on telephone booths. And they even went to the point where they firebombed Chinese restaurants. It was terrorism in the 1980s against Asians. And the poster I remember most vividly was a pencil outline of a Chinese face, slanty eyes, triangular hat, a big band sign, and no Asians. So as a kid, as about 7, 8 years old, you learn, well, it's not cool to be Asian, and maybe it's not safe at times to be Asian. Which brings me to the next thing that you already know. All discrimination is the same because it feels the same. Whether that be racism, whether that be homophobia, whether that be sexism, whether that be Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, xenophobia, bigotry, ageism, classism, able-bodyism, all discrimination is the same. Even if you have outright privilege, you know what this feels like, because I'm not the first person to say this, but for those with privilege, equality can feel like oppression. An example, recent heat wave in Sydney, driving to the shopping centre, looking for a car park spot, absolutely chockers. Drive past disabled car park bay. Why can't I park there? Well then, why can't I get in there? That sucks. All right, drive off, try and find my own parking spot. But when you think about it, for that person with a disability, it's their existence every day where they're thinking, oh man, why can't I go in there? To the thousands of inaccessible places around the world. So what's last on the Venn diagram? It's being a woman. I've realised that this has the biggest vice grip on my existence and my experience. Sexism and misogyny is pervasive in society. It affects half of our population, and it happens everywhere, in our homes, in our workplaces, on the streets, let alone in politics, in media, and in our storytelling. And it's for this reason that I've discovered that being a woman encapsulates being Asian and being gay for me. Recently, I was asked to be in a protest. I'd never been in a protest before. But I figured with everything going on in the world, it was time for me to step up, for me personally to step up and not be a passive-aggressive advocate, because that's nice and safe, but to be an activist and maybe attend this protest. The people who approached me were WIFT, Women in Film and Television. And it was two people in particular who I consider friends and mentors, and they wrote letters to the actors, which is like the Australian Oscars, saying that their feature films were not considered fairly, that there was a lack of transparency, unconscious bias, and unfairness in their selection process, just for the pre-selection, not to choose the winners. Alongside this, they created a charter, and the charter had information and a plan on how the Actor Awards could turn this around. And I thought, if these women are going to stick their neck out, then I can go to a rally. Then they said, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to storm the red carpet of the actors dressed as sausages. And it's going to be the sausage protest. And I went, yes. Backtracking a bit, this is how I think my intersectionality actually looks. And this, here we go, is the sausage protest. It was pretty fun, I do have to admit. And what happened was, it was so creative and so lighthearted and fun that PR people estimate we got $80 to $100 million worth of coverage internationally because of this. Which brings me to the last thing that I think you already know and can do. You can reimagine diversity. What would a post-diverse world look like? We don't know, because we're so attached to the societal norms. So I'll share with you what my reimagined diverse world looks like. It's a world where diversity is normalised. And I don't mean where everyone is the same. No, that's assimilation. I mean where we know that people are individuals and are interesting and are curious about them. It's a world where we know that meritocracy is a myth. There is no such thing as meritocracy. There is no such thing as the best person for the job, because that is a construct. And when you're taught and you grow up believing that head down, bum up, work hard, and you will achieve success, then when you don't achieve success, whatever that success looks like for you, then you're left feeling, if you believe in meritocracy, that you're not good enough. And so we have a whole pile of people from diverse backgrounds feeling a lack of self-worth. You can reimagine diversity. Studies have shown that people who have been discriminated against start to believe that's where they belong, and they start to reinforce and advocate that that's where they should stay. And when I discovered that, that's when my fraud and expert merged. Call it fraudpert, if you like. And I realised that I couldn't be the expert if I didn't have the thoughts and the feelings of being the fraud. We need diversity. We need bottom-up revolutions, top-down leadership and champions, sideways support of each other, so that we don't have to feel this prejudice and discrimination anymore. Imagine all the people who aren't achieving because this is their world. You can change that by reimagining diversity. And so my last word is for the storytellers of this world. There are only two ways you can change people's hearts and minds. One is by sharing your own story, being an individual, letting them know that you're not a stereotype, because let's face it, who is? And the other is by storytelling, is by art, is by educating people's emotions, by changing them at a cellular level so that when they move forward, they remember. And they too can reimagine their world of diversity. You can find your voice. You can create your own intersectional Venn diagram. You can be in your own sausage protest. You can embrace your inner fraud and just keep going. Thank you.